All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Last News Desk. On the left, welcome to another edition of Last News Desk. I love it when it blasts in my ears like that. I get no opportunity to actually mute the tab. Because you can't mute a tab that isn't producing audio. Anyway, welcome to the show. Of course, we got the usual crew of miscreants and misanthropes here. Adam.
Like, would that be like you go?
What?
Anyway,
Whatever.
trying to figure out the acronym there. Like, usual gangs of suspects is Yugos.
Ah, yes. Well, I said miscreants and misanthropes.
Yeah, but you wouldn't put the "and" there.
Ah, yes.
Anyway, hi everybody, Kevin in the house.
Right, Kevin's here. Petty fans around here somewhere.
Oh, I didn't know where the light was.
And of course we got the Golics too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm trying to recall what what the subject this week is all about. Adam.
It's your neighbor.
I mean, that's actually a good segue because our top line is about the California recall.
Yes, indeed.
Failed. Absolutely, positively, miserably.
You honestly don't even know how this came about, other than Republicans are dumb.
It was a technicality.
It came out because California hasn't updated the number of signatures needed to initiate a recall thing since like the 1700s or the 1800s.
Well, to be frank here, yes. The fact of the matter is that California has not updated its recall rules since the last time they had a recall, which we all know how that ended.
Yeah.
But specifically in this situation, the reason why this happened is because number one, Gavin decided to be an idiot for a hot minute by going to a restaurant maskless, which was stupid.
Yeah.
And it pissed off a lot of people enough to where a Trumpkin judge extended the deadline for signature collection to where they got enough signatures to force this thing.
Yep.
And then what happened was that people were very, 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 very upset with Gavin Newsom being what he was, and then all of us. But then, thankfully, Californians realized, oh shit, this is not my father's California Republican Party. Larry Elder as governor? I don't think so. Okay, get out of here. And so, it lost.
Mm-hmm. Quite handily, too.
Handsomely, yes.
Yeah.
It's almost like California is a deep blue state.
Yeah. Yeah, because
by listening to fucking pundits.
Yeah, it's like.
But they were.
Deep blue state. It's a deep blue state, and it's a state that doesn't want to do what it did last time. And this time, instead of getting Arnold Schwarzenegger, the not so bad sounding celebrity, you're getting Larry Elder, who is a freaking loon.
Yeah, Arnie may not have been the most competent governor, but he wasn't malicious. You know.
Yeah, he wasn't malicious. He wasn't.
He genuinely wanted to help.
Yeah.
he just didn't know how.
He sounded good. He felt good. He wasn't a lunatic. Meanwhile, the Republican Party is now run by lunatics. So there you go.
Yeah. The other thing that you have to keep in mind. Is that as a former Californian who lived under Gray Davis, I have to tell you that that election was a clusterfuck. First of all. And second of all, and
a lot of people who were running. I mean, You think Larry? It's Larry. It was only Larry Elder here.
I'm talking.
It was only Larry Elder.
Hold
Jenner.
up. I'm talking about the 2000 gubernatorial election that put Gray Davis in office.
Oh,
I'm drawing a comparison here so that people understand the context of how different this is. Gray Davis was an unpopular candidate. The only reason that he became governor in reality was because he was lieutenant governor under an even less popular Republican.
That would be Pete Wilson, right?
Right, Pete Wilson, who was basically a criminal.
Yeah.
You know, so
who helped lead the California Republican Party at this point in time.
yeah, and the Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't a choice in 2000. He waited until the recall to actually throw his hat in the ring. In 2000, I don't even remember the Republican choices, but they were all awful. And Gray Davis was not good, but just by sheer attrition, he was better than them and the other Democratic candidates at the time. Because
is this 2000 or is this 90? Is this 98 or is this 2002?
whenever Gray Davis got elected, I forget what year it was.
It was 98.
98. Okay. No, he was only in there 3 years because Schwarzenegger got 3 years. That's why. It was the 2000.
His first election was in 98 against Dan Lundgren. He then was re-elected to another term in 2002 against Bill Simon, and the recall was 03.
Ah, I guess I lost track of that. All right. Well, whatever it was, all I know is that the Democratic field didn't even show up because he was the incumbent, and and he was unpopular to begin with, especially after that whole clusterfuck with Enron and buying up all the utility lines that were going to be replaced as part of a mandatory EPA. Requirement that they be modernized because, like, the power grid in California was like 100 years old. Then there was
something that makes Texas look modern.
Yeah, there was something about SDG&E being another possible clusterfuck, and once again they had already scheduled replacing all of the utility lines with more modern equipment, and then the state bought it all, and then they were just like, okay, well now we have to basically rent the power lines from the state, and we have no obligation to do anything about that, and good luck, California, you're all fucked. And then we had the fires and everything else, and Gray Davis's response was not great to begin with, and then when he got recalled, and then President Bush offered to send in FEMA and the troops to help quell the fires, he basically gave a double middle finger to everybody and sat on his hands and did nothing for 3 months.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so not a great guy. Very different set of circumstances. Gavin Newsom was actually a very popular governor whose general policies were not terrible, and was for them until that clusterfuck with appearing in a restaurant without a mask, especially a hoity-toity booster event. At the very minimum, so context is king here, because this is a very different situation. It was one stumble along the way, in a situation that was already unpopular through no fault of Gavin Newsom's.
Right. It's basically like Gray Davis pissed everybody off for a long extended period of time. Meanwhile, Gavin Newsom pissed everybody off for like 5 minutes.
Exactly. So just want to make that clear for everybody.
Everybody calmed down for a minute. They took a breath and they went, "Wait a minute, Larry Elder?"
Right, right. Because even Democrats didn't like Gray Davis in 2002.
Yeah.
I
meanwhile, only like what 6%, only like what 5-6% voted for the recall.
Yeah, something like that. It was really low.
Like 5%. So yeah, I mean, it's like. But yeah, I mean, of course, the question obviously is if it wasn't Larry Elder, but in fact Kevin Faulconer, who is a relative moderate, but unfortunately the Republican Party does not accept moderates anymore.
No, they're rhinos, as far as they're concerned. Yeah.
And hell, even Kevin Faulconer's own voters didn't think so, because the people who chose Kevin Faulconer on question 2 voted no on question 1, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, that's ironic. It's like, so if you vote yes, then who do you want as an alternative? But since you voted no, it really doesn't matter.
although it is a smart thing because they realized, okay, our guy isn't going to make it, and we do not want to tempt the fate.
Yeah.
If they did vote yes and they voted for Faulconer, they'd still be voting for Elder.
Right.
Essentially.
Right.
So at the very least, Faulconer voters were like, okay, this isn't going to happen, and I'm going to support my guy still on 2, but I'm not going to tempt the fate on 1.
One of the biggest problems with California right now is that there's a huge disparity going on right now. I mean, everybody talks about, oh, there's a mass exodus in California, oh, the homelessness and this and that, and it's like, but it also rebounded to be one of the best, if not the strongest economy in the United States right now. And so, in spite of the closures and all that stuff, they've actually benefited a lot. Now, is that heavily tilted towards Silicon Valley? Probably. But at the same time, the state is not hurting for tax revenue or anything like that. And as far as jobs rebounds and stuff like that, they've actually done quite well for themselves. It's just, California politics has always been complicated because California is essentially a country unto itself that just happens to be attached to the United States.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about Texas being a whole other country. Well, California kind of is.
Yeah.
Because you got the right-wing areas, you've got liberal areas, you've got centrist areas, you got all sorts of things.
You got the people who want to break off California and become part of Cascada.
Yeah.
You got dingbats who want to break it into 2 different states, which would benefit no one.
No. I mean, it's freaking complicated, and
I mean, I suppose we could pull the Texas charter and break them into 5 states.
Yeah.
I make this toothy little grin when I say that.
I mean, it's easier.
Yeah,
They would probably enjoy that.
Then I won't.
California, it's like, no.
Yeah, California never had any such provision in its articles of statehood, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, they never had any such provision. Texas is the only state in the union that had some weird proviso built in that they could be busted up into 5 smaller states if necessary.
Because Texas has never really gotten its secession thoughts out of its head, even though it's pretty much gotten out of the heads of all the other southern states.
Yeah.
I mean, when your tourism slogan is "It's like a whole other country," I mean, that's literally your tourism slogan.
Well, I mean, I guess it can be like another country if you let the inmates run the asylum.
Yeah, pretty much.
So yeah, I'm not.
Although it's going to be really good for the California economy if strike happens next month.
Well, yeah.
Nazi! You're going to be hearing that name a lot probably next month. The way things are looking.
Yeah. Well, as I said, the only thing we can offer here on the recall, aside from the fact that it failed and offering context to Newsom himself, is that his situation is no better or worse than anybody else's. I mean, COVID is everybody's problem, so that's not a uniquely California Democrat problem.
It's basically about how you respond to it, and minus that French Laundry nonsense, he hasn't done that bad a job.
No, he really hasn't. I mean,
you would rather have Newsom than half of the governors in this country.
The big homelessness problem, where, that's actually being so shockingly addressed by private industry. They're actually building quaint and colorful little villages in the triangles under overpasses to try to resolve this problem. Give them a safer base of operations that they can cycle in and out of, so that way some of these people can get back on their feet, and that's shockingly noble.
And of course there are other ways to solve the problem, but then you run up against a certain group of people known as the NIMBYs. So
Yeah. Well, that's why they're putting them in those little wedges underneath freeways. That's where you used to find the rip-off used car dealerships and stuff like that. In Southern California, is in that little wedge-shaped triangle underneath the on-ramp to the Interstate 8. Over in La Mesa, over by the RV center. Once again, the problems in California are more localized. I mean, sure, they got high taxes, but they also got a lot of fucking money over there. People generally get paid better in California than they do anywhere else in the country. There's a lot of high-paying tech jobs and things of that nature. It's a state that's thriving, that's striving to build its economy on the backs of sustainable technologies. They're building windmills and solar panels and all sorts of shit all over the state to try to capitalize on all that open land that nobody's living in, and the mountainous terrain. They got to do something with that. So, what better use than power generation, using an almost inexhaustible resource, among other things. All the other problems in California are generally localized, like we talked about the homelessness problem, and they're trying to build those little villages to get people out of the tents and off the streets. And LAPD is probably still one of the biggest problems there. Is in that their response to it is to basically bust up homelessness villages and throw all their shit away. So that's a somewhat unpopular thing, but once again, that's local. The state has somewhat little control over that, unless they send in the National Guard.
Yeah.
And you don't want that. You don't want National Guard boots on the ground in the fucking city of Los Angeles.
I mean, we see what happens when that happens.
So I mean. So the simple fact of the matter is that, they need some policing reform, that's for sure. But other than that, the state and the private sector are actually doing what they can to try to reverse that, short of a constitutional amendment demanding that everybody get universal basic income or some shit that's never going to happen at the federal level. There's very little that they can do beyond what they're doing. I think. I mean, I could be wrong. The point is that they're not fucking it up like the right wing would try to have you believe.
Yeah.
The state of California is actually doing surprisingly okay under the circumstances. And as far as the recall itself, once again. We won, you lost. Get over it. Although Elder was putting out the feelers for the whole he had predicted that he would lose by fraud even before the ballots were cast. Trying to pull a Trump, and I'd say that's probably the most telling thing about this entire situation is the fact that They thought that Trumpism would work in California.
Yeah. Or that, enough Californians would be pissed enough to let Trumpism win. And it's like, no, especially when you decide to have Larry Elder as your poster child.
Yeah, I mean, again, just personally and politically, the state's just not as irrational as everybody on the outside looking in seems to think.
Right. I mean, it may seem like it sometimes, and it probably is sometimes, but not to the point of allowing Governor Larry Elder to be a thing.
Right. Well, I mean, it's,
and now everybody's like, look at how good he finished on question 2. Larry Elder is good for another go at it next year, and it's like, and lose again.
Big time. I don't know. It's just
you got 33% of the vote. He's good to go for next year. You're like, and he'll lose again.
I mean, don't get me.
I mean, a good night for recall proponents, but a good night for Larry Elder. An actual person said this last night.
I refuse to believe Chris Zilla is a person.
No, I talking about somebody else. Talking about Alex
My
Seitz
statement
actually
still
tweeted that last
stands.
night. But yes, your statement is still correct.
You know, I mean, it's like California is not the magical state of Elysium where everything is a utopia all the time, except where it isn't. You know,
No.
it's a complex state with a lot of problems. I lived there for 26 years. Trust me, I understand California politics. You know,
Mhm.
I lived in San Diego of all fucking places, which is
Well, there you go. Yeah.
which is actually a conservative stronghold of the state, and
Mhm.
God knows why. San Diego has never benefited from conservative politics, ever, ever.
I
Mm-mm.
mean, you want to know how bad it is for Republicans in California? The OC is blue now.
Yeah, I mean, the OC didn't have Republicans this time, that's for sure.
Yeah. And keep in mind, Orange County is where modern day conservatism was born. You know,
Yeah.
Barry
The
Goldwater and all
House of
that.
Reagan. The Reagan Library is there, for God's sake.
So things change.
You know, I forgot about that because you know everybody always remembers that Goldwater was the esteemed senator from the state of Arizona, who famously coined the phrase "You're either with us or against us,"
Yeah, well.
which W parroted during his State of the Union address.
Yep.
But
No, he was just the one that got the ball rolling. It's just that Reagan took the ball and then ran it farther.
yeah,
Now, as far as what the California recall pertains to, well, the midterms, no idea.
no real effect, to be honest with you. And even the Washington Examiner, which is a horrific right wing rag, had this to say about it. They basically said that if you're assuming that this either makes the Democrats safe or emboldens Republicans, you're going to be surprisingly disappointed on both counts. They said,
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, I mean,
there is valuable data to be extrapolated here. Also, there were some runoffs in some other states, and the thing, the good news for the Dems is the suburban games look to be real and lasting, and that is bad for Republicans.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know about the Iowa,
Iowa State District 37.
Yeah, Iowa State 37, was it, or something like that?
Yeah, it was Iowa State House District 37. It was a 4-point swing to the Dems. Not enough for the Dem to win, but enough to make it from, I think it was like
statistically
47 to 51-48. So
yeah, it was statistically significant.
yes, it was a move. It was a movement, and it was with the same candidate they ran with in the last competitive election there. So it was a move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also in terms of California, it looks like the Dems won a sizable amount of the white college vote, which I think is going to be a pretty key demographic for Dems going forward.
I'd say so.
I think the thing to keep in mind there is that it would have been far more devastating if the Republicans had somehow pulled an upset there.
Yeah.
This response is somewhat more neutral in favor of the Democrats than it is favorable for the Republicans.
Right. Yeah.
So that was the general takeaway that I was getting even from conservative outlets, was that neutral for the Democrats in this particular case was good, because it would have hurt them far more if they'd have been embarrassed by this.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. The ones who are embarrassed by this are the Republicans, because they lost by a very wide margin. And,
yeah. But that shouldn't have...
And they wasted $250 million, too.
No, 290. It was 290. Yeah, but still, I mean, that's That's a lot of money that Democrats, in my opinion, should sue to recoup, because that's a lot of taxpayer money that was down the drain for a waste of everybody's time.
Yeah. Yeah, and a number of the outlets were also critical of the fact that there was not enough swing away from the Democrats for this ever to have succeeded in the first place. Once again,
Right.
I brought up the comparison between Newsom and Gray Davis's recall, and you had a situation where in 2002 you had a beleaguered, embattled, unpopular governor who made a lot of missteps and was kind of indifferent about it, and then you got Newsom who won by a landslide. Made one or two mistakes, but nothing too heinous.
Yeah.
Certainly
Basically
not.
not enough.
Yeah,
Basically enough for him to go out there and say, "Hey, look, I messed up that one time, but you really want to throw me out for this fucking guy right here?
right.
Really?"
Yeah, and what's interesting about it was that he still had enough support that he could get away with that campaign. If this were any other situation where he was really in trouble, if he was legitimately in trouble,
If you had things that are piled up to the ceiling, like Davis had.
yeah, if he had it piled to the rafters like Davis had, then he would have had to run a very different campaign.
Yeah.
And and this would have been a much bigger grind, and it would have been a lot more heinous for the Democrats.
Yeah, although I still think he probably would have won that regardless because of who he was facing.
Well, yeah. I mean,
It would have been more narrow, but I think he still would have come out on top regardless.
yeah. Well,
But that was not the case, and people got fed into this for pretty much nothing based off of one little outlier poll, and hopefully Survey USA closes up after this, because that outlier got everybody all in a tizzy thinking, "Oh my gosh, this will actually go against. Oh my goodness, Kevin might actually be recalled." No, actually, not really.
That's basic lesson of statistics. Like, seriously, one of the first lessons I learned in statistics classes is you get rid of outliers.
Yeah, or you let that outlier come back to the norm. Which, in fact, guess what? After that one poll where they had removed winning, the next poll, oh, look at that! It's just like everybody else. The recall's going to fail big time.
And so it did.
And so it did, and it did. So
Yeah.
Anyhow.
It's like there's really no easy way to transition into this. So, just kind of move on ahead here. But, on, what was it, Saturday? It was the 20th anniversary of September the 11th. And,
what else is there to say? Really? I mean,
there's plenty to say about it.
Yeah, I mean,
Look,
it was a tragedy that may or may not have been preventable. That we all gave our blind faith and loyalty to a guy who abused it.
Yeah.
Basically, that's basically what it is. I mean,
it wasn't blind faith though.
there were maybe it wasn't blind. There were some people who did try to say, "Hold on, wait a minute" at the time, but they were drowned out.
Certainly there were those voices. I was one of them.
Maybe blind faith was overdoing it, but
I remember reading people who were against this, but it wasn't blind faith. It was anger.
Right? Yeah.
That's what I really remember about
I think that's probably what it should be. Blind anger and loyalty. Really, except for some places.
And certainly, but you know,
I mean, the fact of the matter is that the majority of the country, and I've always said this, the majority of the country basically was in a political coma from the moment that second plane hit on live international television at, what was it, at like 9:03, I think the time was, to the moment that the images were coming out of New Orleans after Katrina. The entire country was basically in a political coma where the Bush administration could say anything and it wouldn't really hurt them much.
yeah. But it's like I really do feel that kind of context is being lost in the world of today. You know, it's like there's a post that's been going around Twitter about showing shock about what some Disney Channel promos looked like in the mid 2000s and calling it propaganda. Like,
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, for the time, it was pretty much the mood. But looking back, it's like, oh my god.
Oh, definitely. But it's like, yeah, I guess it's like the technical definition of propaganda in that it's showing enthusiasm for a cause thing. But it's like it's not what like China's doing today. I'll get to that in a bit, but because they've done some shit and they're about to do some more shit. But it's like no, none of this was government funded. It's like this was the actual fucking expression of everyone in the
government.
culture.
Well, it was government winked and nodded, but it wasn't, over actively supported, funded, whatever. But there was winking and nodding. I mean, Laura Bush is in that thing, for God's sake.
Oh God, yeah. It's like it's just
that's it's wink, nod, and grin.
This is kind of how Americans express themselves,
right?
Especially patriotically.
I mean, yeah, but I remember, like, after 9/11, like, everything had the American flag on it. Every single logo,
freedom prize.
Every single television network logo had the American flag draped on it. I mean, the NBC Peacock had the American flag over it, even in the transparent bug. Okay? So it's like, it wasn't relegated to just the Disney Channel. It was everywhere.
No, of course. No, I mean, that's more a showcase of how deep those feelings had seeped if it's on the fucking Disney Channel.
Yeah.
Because the Disney Channel isn't exactly swayed all that much by national politics.
I mean, like every single kids network, kids blog had something 9/11 related.
Yeah.
Afterwards, it was that.
I'm not defending any of that shit. I hate
it.
I absolutely could not stand that shit going through it.
Right. It's like, but it was the mood.
But it's also stop comparing the pandemic to 9/11. Like, they're different things. The body count doesn't really matter. It's more, this was a attack done by humans, planned out.
It's more like this was an attack that killed 2,000 people based on humanity, and we're losing like thousands every single day at this point. But it's more in terms of the numbers, I think.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if you base it on the numbers, I mean, it's hard not to make the comparison. It was a disaster.
See, the numbers, that's a false game, though. It's not really about body count. It's about, intent. And, as far as we know, this wasn't a biological attack or anything. This was, and the problem isn't, we're under attack, by foreign agents. If we're attacked by anything right now, it's goddamn fucking stubbornness.
Yeah.
It's not even just pure stupidity at this point. It's
not anymore. Not anymore.
Because
it may have been at the start. It may have been at the start, but now it's like you're legitimately being stubborn.
Yeah, because apparently the anti-vax crowd is taking some new fucking horse medicine. No, sorry.
Ivermectin.
No, it's
No, it's a new.
Bactin.
It's a new thing. It's what's it?
It's I think it's Bactin. It's yeah.
Let me
It,
see what it is.
yeah, it's like I'm trying to remember the name, but
There's a guy on TikTok who does this impression of Alex crossed with Yosemite Sam that covered a number of the different horse medications. He's like, this one cures horse and bovine pink eye. My vision's gonna be so clear. I'll see COVID coming from 100 miles away.
yeah. But this new thing, it's apparently vaginal douche.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
What a metaphor.
Toxic, but-
What a perfect metaphor.
Yeah. Also, highly toxic.
Uh-huh.
You know, like I said, this is just natural selection at this point.
Anti-vaccine people are poisoning themselves.
Well, this is also coming from the crowd who thinks they could give their children bleach to cure autism.
Okay. It's betadine. It's betadine.
Benadine, there we go. And
But maybe they could drink an entire gallon of Hoof Doctor while they're at it.
look, it's going to go that way at some point because, like I said, it's not just stupidity at this point; it's stubbornness. These motherfuckers.
It's specifically povidone. It's specifically povidone iodine, which is sold under the brand name betadine, which is firstly gargled, but it is also a vaginal douche. Yes, in some countries.
I'm like, and
So they're gargling iodine now.
I'm apparently supposed to be upset about all this, but I'm just like, you know what? Fine. You drink the fucking poison. You shuffle off this mortal coil. Like, also, by the way, apparently the anti-vaxxers are turning against the ER because they think that the hospital people are killing them. I'm like, I'm fine with this if it keeps them away from the ER and clogging up our system.
The only reason I'm upset about this fact is because of the fact that there are probably a lot of kids involved in this.
Probably, but
And so
burnt out every fucking ounce of caring I could ever have for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's still anger-inducing because it literally is keeping us back. That's the thing why you should be upset about this. Yeah, it's killing them off.
I'm not.
It should be, but I mean, you can call it active selection if you want. It's not wrong, but they're still holding us back, and that's why we should be upset about this. Is because of the fact that you being stubborn is hurting us, and also happens to possibly open the door for maybe future variants down the road. Because we are not at a point yet where we can avoid that. I mean, we're only at 53% fully vaccinated. That's still like 48% of the country not that fully vaccinated, and that opens the door for any one of these new variants that could potentially bust through the vaccine protection. I mean, as long as there is a hole to feed off of, we are still very much at risk. That's why you should be upset. Yes, it's killing them off. Yes, it's killing off stupid people. But at the same time, those stupid people are a feeding ground for potentially a more damaging and disastrous variant that could pop up at any time. Unless we dramatically increase our vaccination rate.
Look, well, I mean, mandatory vaccinations are, flowing ever more. Mm-hmm. And, apparently that is having a material effect. But, it's like, look, the only way you're getting certain people to take this is if you're fucking putting it in a dart.
Yeah.
A blowgun.
Yeah, at this point,
Can we start that?
I wish.
I had I had some people on Facebook circulating memes showing about how disciplined people were a century ago with the Spanish flu, and I said, "The fuck you say?" I'm like, you do understand that places like San Francisco had to actually hire Pinkertons to walk around the streets, armed and dangerous in trench coats to issue fines to people who were walking around without masks, right? And then if they resisted citation and or arrest, they could be shot.
Yeah,
That's the extreme they had to go to in the last year of the previous pandemic.
yeah, I'm like the bird flu pandemic. Guess what? That was the worst pandemic of all time. Like, like what? 50 million dead? Maybe more?
I think so,
Seriously.
Yeah.
You know.
But I mean, and also remember the whole thing with Philadelphia in that pandemic. The whole, let's hold a parade, nothing go wrong. Oh shit! So it's like they were loose, but although I think you could argue that once after they got loose and once they actually dealt with it, that they had a much better understanding of, okay, we need to go hard here compared to what's happening right now.
For all the criticisms of W, him actually hiring people like Anthony Fauci and building the pandemic response team were shockingly progressive of him.
He was like.
I mean, we didn't have a bird flu problem here in America when we could have easily had it.
Yeah, and then when swine flu and Ebola hit, Obama had that clamped down because the system was in place, and he saw it, and he said, "We got to beef that shit up."
Yeah, let's stop it before it gets worse. Let's stop it here at the start of things and not wait.
Meanwhile, Trump gets in there.
Meanwhile, Obama hands the Trump people all of this stuff. Trump's people take that stuff, puts it up on the shelf, not even wanting to touch it, letting it catch dust.
It's like if they did prove that the national stockpile was depleted, and it's like, well, yeah, the national stockpile was depleted somewhat by the last pandemic, but the simple fact of the matter is I'm pretty sure Trump sold it on the black market.
Yeah.
Or gave it away to his cronies, and then said, "Look! They left the cupboards bare." It's like, well, you're a fucking billionaire. Why don't you buy more masks, you fucking asshole?
Yeah,
the whole thing with the malfunctioning ventilators.
Yeah,
pretty much.
I'm basically like, yeah, those should be tested before you've sent them out, dumbasses.
Yeah. We'll do a pop test. We'll plug it into the wall and see if the lights come on.
Yeah, pretty much.
That would have required him to, actually hire somebody to do something.
Well, it would have required him to use his fucking brain first off.
Yeah, pretty much.
But he's got a big brain. It's like, yes, but it's filled with empty space.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently it's fit to do rigged boxing matches.
Yeah.
Fucking God.
Yeah. Because I don't know if you noticed or not, but boxing is dying.
I've noticed.
It's now being relegated to, fake, show matches with the Logan brothers. This Triller thing with that apparently they managed to get Donald Trump.
WWE. Serious question. What I'm guessing MMA ate boxing's lunch that badly?
I guess, yeah, pretty much. And now there's talk that it might not be in the Olympics in 2024.
I'm okay with this.
I'm like, what would the... I mean, hiring disgraced ex-presidents to do your backup commentary.
My gosh. And the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of legit boxers right now that actually are doing boxing the way it has been done since the beginning of time. It's just being undermined by the fact that the people in charge of boxing in general don't give a shit about it anymore, or even if they do, it's being undermined by this Triller shit.
Mm-hmm.
Which is run and controlled by people who should know better.
Do they know better?
I said should know better. That's the important word. Should. That's should.
In this?
Is what?
Is Don King somehow involved in all this?
This is way beyond Don King, man. This is way
You're
beyond
right.
Don King.
You're
Don
right.
King was a legit promoter, okay? He put
I'll
on
give you
legit
that.
matches. He put on legit matches. Yes, he did it in a showy, what the fuck way, but at the same time, it was legit boxing. There were legit titles on the line. There were
Fair enough.
legit boxers. Mike Tyson was a legit boxer until he bit Holyfield's ear off, but but still.
All right.
These were legit matches. This Triller thing is whacked up even for Don King.
Before we delve too far into entertainment news, I did want to bring up the fact that there is some additional news in the Arizona bullshit recount.
Go on.
The state Supreme Court has insisted that cyber ninjas turn over their documents, and the state Senate is now finally requiring that they wrap up their shit and turn in their draft report. Meanwhile, Arizona Senate...
It will be nice to see if they manage to come up with anything.
Yeah. I figured this is relevant to the past week and the fact that we're talking about conspiracies in general here today.
One thing, is this still about the presidential election?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Fucking
peripherally, you know, ostensibly they're trying to frame it as a canary in a coal mine for crafting voting regulations going forward to prevent this massive and widespread fraud that's going on. Oh boy, you know.
You
But-
can tell
Humanity.
there's amazingly skilled fraudsters because there's no evidence of it.
But Senate President Karen Fann, who is the ringleader of all this nonsense,
Bullshit.
is trying to be both instigator and firefighter in this conflagration, because now threats are being made against members of the state Senate who are of the Republican persuasion speaking out against the audit. And she's trying to, and she's trying to say, no, we have to be civil about this. And it's like, well, do your fucking job.
Too late. Too late. You started this. Too late.
Yeah, so she's under fire now.
Yeah, good. You're good.
which is probably spurring this move to tell cyber ninjas to
Wrap it up, Buttercup.
yeah, wrap it up, because you can't faff about any longer continuing to perpetuate this nonsense.
Yes, because it's going to kill them next year. They want us to go on further.
Yep. Yeah, it's off the chain, and it's going to be a fucking disaster. It's going to, you know, if we sent two...
It was always going to end that way. It was always going to end that way.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've already sent 2 Democratic senators to the Senate.
Look, the only reason that Ducey got elected was because he ran against the Bernie Act.
Yep.
You have 2 Democratic senators, a Democratic Secretary of State, and the only reason that Ducey's still around is because of the fact that he ran against the Bernie Act. If he ran against someone of the Kelly Cinema kind, he probably would have lost.
Yep. And while these Democrats that we have received from the great state of Arizona are not exactly ideal Democrats, they're way better than the alternative.
Yeah.
Have a functioning brain.
They can,
Unlike the
you know what?
Republicans.
They're not completely intractable. They can actually be negotiated with. We just need to figure out what they fucking want.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
The thing, isn't it?
And here's the thing about Cinema. She's using Manchin as cover because he's the senior senator. And so whatever he does, she follows suit.
Apparently not here. Apparently, well, that's not just in public, but apparently in private, she's basically the Manchin in private. Basically, it's Manchin in public on TV, meanwhile Cinema's doing it the same shit in private.
Well, the point is that she finds cover in his antics. So as a result, if he changes his mind on something, she will most likely follow suit. That has been the historical precedence. If Manchin changed his tune on the filibuster tomorrow, then she would change his mind. But that's not going to happen. He's basically said that that's here forever. So
Immortal. Yeah, immortal. well, immortal until Republicans take control and they kill it. But
Yeah. That'll be interesting.
I mean,
They want to keep it around until they get in charge.
also, it might be interesting that they stay hard and firm on what they want in terms of means testing a lot of type of shit, and then they kill everything that they wanted. Like, yeah, you can go hard on the Build Back Better plan, but if you're not careful, you're going to kill the freaking infrastructure bill that you want passed.
What's amazing to me is this performative act here, where they're putting forward this the Voting Rights Acts, in its various forms, that they finally got an agreement to get it to the Senate floor, but it's going to get filibustered to death. And Manchin's actually had the nerve to fucking say that he's going to magically find 10 Republicans to vote for it.
It's like,
So what needs to be
shut
done?
up.
No, what needs to be done is when this goes down in flames, for fuck's sakes, drag Manchin's feet to the fire on this. Because he
Yes,
keeps
don't just say, oh, the Republicans killed it. No, you have to say, Joe, you said you would get 10 Republicans. You didn't get 10 Republicans. Sit down, shut up, and stop this nonsense with the filibuster. It's over.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just simply go, oh, well, Republicans, poor Republicans, how dare they? It's like, no. The reason why we're at this point is because Joe Manchin said that he thought that he could get 10 Republicans, and that there are 10 Republicans for this. Meanwhile, you're probably not going to get any.
Right. The Republicans don't even have to actively resist. At this point, they literally just have to sit in their chairs and steeple their fingers. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to be mean. They don't have to say anything publicly. Yeah, they don't have to do anything. Democracy dies in darkness, as the expression goes, and that's what they're doing. They're just sitting back. They're just sitting back and letting this all happen because they don't have to do anything. I mean, look at how little you've actually heard out of Mitch McConnell lately. Because
You've heard from him, and he's basically like,
yeah, but
I pray for Manchin and Sinema because they're doing what we want them to do.
Right, but other than that, I mean, he's just kind of sitting back and being calm about it, because he's got nothing to worry about.
Right, because he's just laughing over the fact that Manchin and Sinema are being fucking stupid. There's nothing we can do to change that fact.
It's like that bit from the movie Heartbreak Ridge where Major Powers says to Gunny Highway, and he says, I'm going to run you out of the Corps, and the best part about it is you're going to do all the work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what's going on right here. Is that McConnell isn't doing any work to run the Democrats out of the Senate. They're doing it themselves. If they get run out of the Senate, it's their own doing. Because they didn't take decisive, swift action to try to change things. Because that seems to be like the flavor of the day. People almost don't even care what the action is as long as it's decisive and has visible, immediate changes. Because things have been the same for too fucking long.
Be careful what you wish.
Hey, but look, I'm not telling you that that's a good way to view things. Isn't that the warning that Ben Franklin gave us? Was that ultimately the mob is something to be feared? I mean, and isn't it Tommy Lee Jones's line from Tommy Lee Jones's line from Men in Black that individuals are intelligent but the masses are.
Yeah, it's a response to people are smart. It's a person is smart. People are dumb, panicky animals, and you know it.
Thank you for the dialogue there. I couldn't remember the exact verbiage. But I mean that's basically what it is. But this is what costs them is that they don't take bold action, or at least give the illusion of taking bold action.
Well, there's still time on that front.
We hope.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's always the problem. There's still time until there isn't.
Well, I mean,
The procrastinator's creed. Yeah, the procrastinator's creed. Is
well, it's not procrastination that's going on right now. It turns out negotiating a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure bill is kind of hard. Especially when you've got a lot of competing interests going on.
Yeah, because guess what? The lobbyists have gotten involved, and they're screwing it up like they always do.
Like, yeah, I heard about the drug pricing thing. Like,
$700 million hole, boom, right there.
Well, here's the thing that may not take. Like, once again, all of this is still being worked out, still being meted out, because as much as the centrists may torpedo this over X, Y, and Z, the leftists may torpedo this over X, Y, and Z. Now, that's why this hasn't been the instantaneous action that it has been. But
although frankly, the moderates have been the ones that have put forward the X, Y's, and Z's rather than the leftists here, and the leftists are frankly righteous about going apeshit over the moderates, saying X, Y, and Z. Like work requirement for childcare.
Like I said, it's being worked out. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, shifting to entertainment.
Negotiation and compromise is about coming up with a little bit of something for everybody that satisfies nobody.
Yeah. Anyway, so.
Thank you, Star Trek Lower Decks, for that one.
It's like, once again, there's no easy way to transition into this. So, unfortunately, what was it, yesterday? It was announced that Norm Macdonald has passed away at the age of 61.
Yep.
Apparently due to a 9-year battle with cancer that he didn't let anyone know he was doing. Which is a very Norm Macdonald thing. Like, I can't say Norm Macdonald was ever my favorite comedian, but I certainly enjoyed him, at least like in the late 90s. SNL, like, I did watch Dirty Work. And, I actually watched some of his sitcom, which, people don't remember as much as they perhaps should. But, it's like, Norm Macdonald was a particular kind of comedian. I think that's why, he was successful, but, he wasn't, next level, say, Eddie Murphy, Will Ferrell, Adam Sandler level breakout hit. But,
he was surprisingly big at hitting back at institutional racism, which was kind of interesting. He was criticizing some radio hosts for basically endorsing redlining, and there was a number of things that were like, I didn't realize he did that.
Right. The reason why he got fired from SNL, he kept making jokes about OJ, and apparently, like, the executive who fired him was a friend of OJ. It's like
there is that, but he also dropped an F-bomb live on the air.
Yeah, that I think was the actual inciting incident, the pretext, if you will, to actually get rid of him. But he was also told point blank, "You're not funny," like, which is,
Well, Frank Caliendo did make the point that Norm did have a tendency to invest a lot in loss with continually referencing crack whores.
And David Hasselhoff.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. In some cases, he was a little one note. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I always enjoyed him in stuff that I saw him in. And the sad part is, aside from him playing the gelatinous character of Yaphet in the Orville, I can't name a Norm Macdonald movie off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I feel kind of bad about that.
Like I said, I can because I actually went to see it in the theaters. Dirty Work.
Uh,
Uh,
That's probably like the biggest movie he starred in. Like it's the only one I can think of where he was the lead.
uh-huh.
And like I said, it's not something that really comes up when you talk about Norm Macdonald. Like Norm Macdonald, like the things that I've been seeing in regards to Norm Macdonald is his work on Saturday Night Live and his talk show appearances and his podcasting, because that's where his humor really shined. This is getting back to that, why he wasn't a next level breakthrough sensation or anything like that, is because he didn't really work in traditional, comedy. Like he had a sitcom, it existed for 3 seasons, but it's not brought up like say Seinfeld or Friends or Frasier or even like the Drew Carey show, which it aired next to. And like his movie roles, it's bouncing off somebody.
Right.
That's because Norm Macdonald has had a very dry wit, very deadpan humor. It's it's a taste I like because that's my humor.
yeah.
His Burt Reynolds impression.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Pigeon on Mike Tyson Mystery.
I was gonna say the Burt Reynolds impersonation and Turd Ferguson from Celebrity Jeopardy.
Yeah.
That gets me every fucking time. Every fucking time.
Daryl Hammond's still alive though.
Yeah, he's the voice of SNL now.
Huh, neat.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't watched SNL in like maybe
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, he will be missed. Like
That's the thing is, the people that we don't realize that we appreciate in entertainment are the ones who fill in those bit parts and colorful little roles that jump out at us when we think about it. It's like, oh yeah, he was that guy. Yeah.
Definition of don't know what you got till it's gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But again,
Although
that bounce from Saturday Night Live really damaged his career.
Yeah, he wasn't too torn up about it though.
No, he wasn't. But I'm just saying that if he was a rising star at that time, that really pumped the hate brakes on him.
Yeah. Yeah. Still, I think he did okay for himself. Like,
Yeah. Well, and also it contextualizes things because if you think about it, if he was ill and quietly battling cancer for 9 years, that probably slowed him down a little bit as far as role selection and whether or not he put himself out in the hustle.
Well, that's probably why most of the stuff he was doing lately was voice work.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
like I said, he was Pigeon on the Mike Tyson Mysteries, and he did other voice work roles, which is, I guess, easier to do with cancer. I honestly don't know. Like,
Yeah.
But,
Well, sitting in a studio is a very different thing than actually getting out there and putting your body on the line because. If you can't physically do it, you can't physically do it. That's why voice actors stay relevant into their 90s, and
Yeah, all you have to be able to do is keep being able to talk.
yeah, and then stage and film actors tend to start to fade in their 60s.
looking at you, cast of DuckTales. Seriously, Scrooge McDuck and Magic Express original voice actors worked into their 90s.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you can tell this based on the fact that, like, DuckTales was in, the 80s? And the same, and the same people voiced Scrooge and Magica in DuckTales Remastered in the 2010s.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Alan Young and June Foray. I mean,
June Foray, didn't she?
Which-
She
and
passed
which
away at
also,
like
like,
99, something like that.
yeah, 99.
They both.
99.
And like, rest in peace, Alan Young, for that. Was like one of the last things he did was DuckTales Remastered.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, Alan Oppenheimer, who played Skeletor in He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, everybody was mad that Mark Hamill was cast as Skeletor instead of him, but he was there. He was Moss Man, for Christ's sake. Which was
how old is Frank Welker now?
Fuck.
80 something.
70s? 80s?
76?
Let's take a look here.
Not just him, but Peter Cullen.
Uh,
You know?
Right?
Because Frank Welker has been voicing everyone.
He's been
Since
Fred since
forever.
fucking forever, dude. He's been Fred for fucking ever.
Yep.
It's not just Fred, though.
He's still Fred.
I know, but it's not just Fred. He does so many
It
voices.
doesn't matter. Look at this. I look him up. TV and movies. Scooby-Doo, 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 Scooby-Doo. Okay, Aladdin.
yeah.
He was in both versions of Aladdin as the voice of something. But, you know, it's like, but it's Scooby-Doo all the fucking way, man. You know?
Yeah.
But who cares? We love him.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
He's 75.
Ooh, and Fred
Okay,
Jones.
so not that old, but still getting up there.
But what I was going off about Alan Oppenheimer was he's 91.
Yeah, that is
And
that
he's
is very up
and he's
there.
still there, and he's like on TikTok and Instagram going, yeah, fools, you know.
Uh,
I'll get you, He-Man. You know, I'm working on my Alan Oppenheimer Skeletor. Just so you know. I can't just do it extemporaneously though. I have to have a feed line. At least not yet.
anyhow.
From the deeply tragic to the hilariously stupid, over to Viacom.
Yes. Yeah. Specifically to Paramount.
Yeah, Kevin, you want to handle this one?
Yes, well, as I am the resident Viacom CBS bear, aka I believe that Viacom CBS will not be a thing within the next 5 to 10 years because Sherry Redstone will sell it off after she finally realizes that this isn't working anymore. This past week, Sherry Redstone and company decided to push out, God, what's his name? Jim. He has a wild name here. I gotta say it because it's a unique name. Jim Giannopoulos. I think that's how it's pronounced. Yeah, he was the chairman and CEO of Paramount Pictures. And he pretty much took the job in 2017, and was charged with turning the studio around because Paramount was a mess in 2017. He pretty much kind of did that, although not in a deep way because, hello. But what has happened in terms of COVID is that streaming is a big thing now, and I don't know if you know this or not, but Viacom CBS has a streaming service of their own. It has the Paramount name on it.
Paramount Plus.
Yes, and they want Paramount to pretty much be the driver of this thing. And Jim Giannopoulos is a film guy, and we can't have that. So what we do, because he came from 20th Century Fox, if you recall. So they decided to push him out the door in favor of a guy who can feed the need of streaming and deliver low budget, mediocre projects. His name is Brian Robbins. Now, if that name sounds familiar to you, yes, it's the same Brian Robbins who once started head of the class and is the president of Nickelodeon. And is still the president of Nickelodeon, even though he's the new headmaster of Paramount. This is a Brian Robbins who has no experience running a film studio. This is a guy who has no experience running a film studio, who's going to have to deal with people who explicitly want theatrical releases. Hi, Tom Cruise. This is going to end in disaster.
Well, especially if they don't set the contract. The whole thing with ScarJo and everybody else over at Disney is that they set up the contracts under the old model, and they're trying to force the industry into a new paradigm of direct release and no longer and just cutting out the theaters as middlemen, and
well, here's the thing, though.
And the distributors and everybody else.
Here's the thing, though. The distributors and theatrical, yeah, they may be going at each other, but eventually but at the same time, they're still agreeing for the most part.
Oh, no. I didn't say they were going at each other. I'm saying that these studios are trying to push them out of the equation, thus saving theoretically billions of dollars. But at the same time, you don't just flip over the flapjack of the industry overnight. Paradigm shifts. Well, if you try to do a paradigm shift quickly, it's a little bit like trying to go from first to fifth gear without a clutch.
But at the same time, the theaters and everything else and everybody else, they have one thing on their side, and that is these directors, these producers, and these stars who actually do not want to lose theatrical as part of their equation. Because see, they're not on board with this idea of streaming first. Because you were born with the idea of how magical the box office and theaters are.
Oh no, I agree with this, and this is what I'm saying is that the paradigm shift is going to be long and fraught because it's one of the because the old guard wants things a particular way because that's how they grew up and that's how they've trained their proteges to think and so on and so forth. And it's like the studios are trying to force the issue of this, and they're going to lose. But it's not just Paramount. It's not just Viacom, CBS. It's all of them. They're all going to lose on this.
Here's the thing, though. Warner, Disney, and everybody else now are starting to come to the whole. Well, maybe we can work this out here. Now there's still a sense of,
right.
We want to go as hard as we possibly can, but at the same time, they're agreeing on 30-day windows, 45-day windows, and everything else.
Right.
Here we have a completely different situation with Paramount because they have not made a single point of wanting to get to a middle ground here. At all. They have not said a word in talking about this new normal that they put together here at Paramount about theatrical at all. Period.
Right.
And you're dealing with people when it comes to Paramount with the people that they have in their realm who are harder than hardball. And I can tell you this, Tom Cruise is not going to accept streaming. And he is the only legit star that you have in your tank right now. He is the only one that can make a movie and it can guaranteed make bank. You have nobody else, and they made this hard move because they want to push Paramount Plus. It is not going to work, and within 5 years, once it's clear that it's not going to work, and eventually Sherry Redstone is going to have to see the light, cash out, and put this company up for sale. This is not going to end in any other way other than that. How long is that going to take? I don't know. I said 5 to 10 years. That's just my guesstimate. But this is not going to end in a way with Paramount Pictures telling the theaters to go away and it being a successful studio. They are not going to. Paramount Pictures is not going to survive putting out low-budget, mediocre revival movies or whatnot for Paramount Plus. That's just not how it's going to go. You have to have at least some level of theatrical in there. You have to.
Well,
that's just the bottom line.
Aside from, Deadline and Hollywood Reporter and other tabloid resources, though, we we don't really know a lot about what actually goes on inside Paramount. And here's the deal, because they're so tight-lipped about it. Just recently, they said, like within the last 2 weeks, they said categorically now that they have 4 Star Trek-related theatrical projects in the works. So I don't know if what you're saying here is absolutely true, because I mean on the surface it appears that it appears that way because of the moves that they're making. But but Paramount has always been a weird studio in that they do a lot of moves in silence, and so it's difficult to gauge.
Public silence, but the private volume is loud. There's a loud thing there.
I get that, but aside from Tom Cruise, Paramount and CBS seem very, very heavily focused right now on a multi-billion-dollar franchise called Star Trek, which, given the fact that Star Wars has gone almost completely to streaming television series, and that their entire motion picture empire has crumbled around them, and it has been put almost entirely on hold. And that they're doing almost the entire rollout of Phase 4, for example, of Marvel has been relegated to streaming television series. The same thing with the Star Wars franchise, which is giving them great success. And of course, as you said, they're turning around on theatrical releases. I don't know that it's entirely true that they're going to focus exclusively on streaming and cut out the theaters entirely. Yes, that certainly seems like what they're doing, but they also seem much more heavily focused on Star Trek, which, as far as subscription and streaming services and their partners with Hulu and Netflix, as a person who not only builds sci-fi entertainment, but also is an avid fan of Star Trek, I keep my ear close to the ground on this one. I listen to the groups. I watch the rumors closely to see what's actually happening, and that seems really their primary focus. So Tom Cruise is not the only card in their deck. He's the only theatrical card in their deck. But Paramount Pictures has always been hanging on by a thread. That company barely breaks even.
Okay, I'm just saying that in terms of the whole theatrical situation here, because this is
they may get out of the whole fucking theatrical business entirely. They may just stop making movies and go entirely streaming television series, especially with, again, the success of Star Trek. They may just say, fuck it. We're not going to do any more of this theatrical release stuff. We're just going to make our own shit and sell it directly to the public.
Well, sure. Maybe. Well, sure. That's probably what they might do at this for a while. But at the same time, it's not going to be a long term. It's not going to be good for them long term, because that's going to do is send a one-way ticket to them being bought up by, I'm going to throw a guess here, David Zaslav and Discovery.
You think so?
At this point, yeah, at this point, because look, Paramount is one of their companies, whether they like it or not. It's the name of their streaming service for a reason. Mm-hmm. So.
No, I'm just. Go ahead, Adam, jump in there.
And yet, here's the thing: for all the talk of Paramount, it's Nickelodeon that's getting the nod, because the person that they put in charge now is the director of Bloodburg.
Yes, it's the president of Nick, and he's still the president of Nick while simultaneously going to be the new head of Paramount Pictures. That's not going to be long-term sustainable, in my opinion.
Well, the interesting thing is, of course, they have a Star Trek tie-in to Nickelodeon as well, with this Prodigy series being the most widely anticipated Star Trek release of the entire Kurtzman era.
I think I probably my focus on Tom Cruise probably was a little much here.
Maybe,
but let me rephrase it then with that Star Trek note. Paramount is probably the studio with the least amount of IP to exploit, and that's the problem here. Because they have Star Trek.
They're not the least. That'd be Sony, but
the only thing.
I mean, relatively speaking,
I agree. They are taking a very risky approach, because running your own streaming service, or streaming services in the case of Viacom, because it's not just
they've got a lot. Yeah, they've got a lot of IP though. I mean, as a member of CBS All Access and Paramount Plus, basically the entire CBS library of programming, plus any acquisitions that they've made over the last, 7 decades, is in their library now and is exploitable. You know,
Sure, the problem is that they suck at exploiting it.
do they?
Frankly, well,
The TV, they're actually going gangbusters. It's always been the motion picture division that has suffered.
Yeah, and did somebody drop out?
I think we lost Petty Fan.
Petty is gone.
Yeah, maybe it was too shouty.
No, he left the post in private business. He has to. He was about to fall asleep in his chair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We didn't give him an opportunity to participate that much. I'm sorry to say.
yeah.
Anyway, let's bring this line of thought to its logical or illogical conclusion, depending on which side of Mr. Spock you fall on.
Yeah, let's get it out of here.
As far as Viacom, exploiting its IP, they're getting better at that. A darn sight better than, believe it or not, Disney in a lot of places. Because I got into a conversation about this the other day in regards to, of all things, the Owl House and the Loud House.
Yep.
Because you look at the Owl House. I mean, great series and all that, but look at what Disney's doing to it. Its season 3 got cut short to 3 shorts. Meanwhile, the Loud House,
I mean, you're right.
spin-offs, movies, merchandise.
Yep. They turn a lot of their TVs, especially their animation division, is going gangbusters right now. So if Paramount, as a company, if Viacom, Paramount, whatever they're calling themselves this week, is smart, go with what you're good at. And if movies is kind of a thing that you do that people, oh yeah, I remember this one from the 50s, and I remember when they did Star Trek, and I remember when they did this, and I remember when they did that. But I mean, seriously, it's like, how often do people turn around and say, oh yeah, Paramount Pictures, those truly iconic films?
I honestly, look, I just don't think that they could survive with this at the front. I just don't think they can.
I mean, they're taking. You're right. They're taking a risky gambit going up against the likes of Netflix and Hulu, which Hulu, of course, now technically being a Disney holding. I think it's only a matter of time before they roll all that program into Disney Plus. But I don't know. This might be the smart move because, again, television television and the fact that they own CBS, the fact that they own and control CBS. Really makes the difference here in looking at which direction I think they should go. Because once again, I'm sure there's like a lot of films with, back in the day that everybody says, oh yeah, Paramount. But again, it's like when I think about Paramount, the smartest motion picture decision that they've made of the last 3 decades, besides continuously funding Tom Cruise Mission Impossible projects, of which, by the way, 2 and 3 were fucking horrible, which makes it difficult for me to watch through them so that way I can get caught up on what's happening in all the infinite sequels. But realistically speaking, they have always excelled at television. It's like we always joked that CBS was competing for 4th amongst the big 3 back in the day, but they acquired all of the IP. It's like NBC let Star Trek go, and CBS snapped it up.
It's also, for as derided as CBS is, it gets the ratings.
It does now. I mean, they made a huge turn. It's like get ready for CBS when they changed their entire branding to be less, shall we say, grandfatherly. I mean, the days of Walter Cronkite and the evening news are just.
Although I have to push back on that and state that the reason why CBS has the ratings that it is because they are the grandfatherly network.
Yeah, who do you think's working on CIS? Like, ain't young people.
Well, which one? I mean, because, are we talking Los Angeles? Or are we talking New Orleans? Or
All of them.
Are we talking about the revival? No, on just old shows. Are we talking about the new revival of CSI, the CSI Vegas? Or are we talking,
I said NCIS.
No, but NCIS. But it's like all of these shows, these infinite spin-offs. I gotta say, they're much more successful at long-running spin-offs than NBC. I mean, Law and Order, sure, they've got SVU that has become the longest-running television series, weekly television series in history. Outside of drama, outside of daytime television, obviously the soap operas are ridiculous. And The Simpsons,
the longest running weekly.
Right.
But yeah.
But aside from Special Victims Unit, the original series didn't last quite that long, and there's no end in sight for that. Now we've got the Elliot Stabler spinoff. Organized crime, and God knows how that's going to go if they're only going to do 8 to 13 episodes a season, but they've really got the whole let's milk a franchise infinitely down pat. Each one has a different thing for every age group. The original CSI appeals to a much older crowd. We'll see what happens when they come back as Vegas. The Los Angeles show appeals to a much younger crowd because, I mean, come on. Look at the fucking cast of that show. And then New Orleans kind of sits in that weird middle ground that likes Scott Bakula for some reason. Of course, it went off. Of course, probably largely due to the pandemic. It's being ended, but yeah, I mean, there's no stopping in sight for any of these shows, for the most part. At least the franchise itself is continuing on in some way, shape, or form. And so, bearing in mind that aside from Star Trek Discovery and Picard, that we have already 3 new Star Trek series coming out, and now we have the rumors that Paramount has not abandoned any of these 4 Star Trek film projects, although we don't know which ones they actually are anymore because they love keeping fucking secrets. I just
so we have 4 writing rooms. Who the hell knows?
Yeah, the point, and the fact that they've always had that weird close relationship with J.J. Abrams and Alex Kurtzman and Robert Orci, who are actually remarkably good creators in their own rights. So it's hard to say. I think that the paradigm shift to television might actually be their saving grace. And then put out the occasional good movie.
Although that depends on if the people who are in their employment actually go along with the program, which they probably won't.
We'll see. I mean, their animation division is what is really dominating right now. This is the point I think Adam and I are making, and so animation, of course, is most ideally suited for the small screen. People sitting there consuming it in bulk in streaming. That's why.
Certainly, culturally, it is.
Yeah.
Though they are going to the big screen with their animation as well. Like Avatar.
Right.
They are doing theatrical.
Yeah, there you go. Paramount has always had a strong relationship with James Cameron.
Not that Avatar.
but it's true. Don't deny it.
Well, yeah. I mean,
some of the biggest blockbusters of all time were James Cameron films that, some of the biggest blockbusters that didn't have the words Star and Wars or Marvel Comics stuck on them somewhere.
Titanic was a Paramount film.
Yep, as was Avatar. Wasn't Avatar?
Avatar, Airbender. Avatar, the James Cameron was Fox.
Okay.
Now Disney.
Okay. So that's split, but still.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should probably wrap this up because it's almost 1.
Yeah.
It's the longest thing we've ever had.
Well, we had a lot to talk about.
Anyway, let's wrap it up.
All right. So no studio news this week. Pretty much straightforward there, and yeah, that's it. All right, so be sure to join me and Varias on Saturday for more competitive Overwatch. Until then, I'm your host, Mac Halden. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there, kids.
Mask up and vax up, y'all.